Welcome to the Soul Deep Podcast with Jessica Janty. Join me as we dive deep into raw, real, in-depth conversations about life, love, relationships, sexuality, spirituality, what it is we're really here for, and anything in between. I want this to feel like a safe space for anyone on a spiritual journey, trying to find answers in your truth by having open heart and open-minded conversations. And my hope for you as a listener is that you feel this is a safe space here, a place to hear things from a different perspective that may challenge you and your thinking in the best way possible, allowing you to give grace to how you've been raised or what you've been taught or told to believe. And perhaps you find your truth as I search for mine on this journey we call life. So grab your favorite drink, cozy on up to your couch or wherever you listen from, and join me for these soul deep conversations. I can cut this out too, so whatever you say.
It's all good. It's all good. I think sometimes like the things that we are called to edit out, it's exactly what somebody needs to hear. So I try really hard to not even edit out my podcast because I feel like the breaks and I don't know, the imperfection and the things that I'm like, oh, should we cut that out? No, that's real life. And I think in entrepreneurship and motherhood and like all those things, it's so interesting how we try and filter that out. And that's the real deal, you know?
Yeah, so true. So true. Okay, welcome back to the podcast. And today I'm so excited to have my mentor, and I would call you a friend because you are just an amazing person and I just love you. So here's Casey. Casey, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited that we're finally here.
I know. Yes, we have
We've been trying to get here
canceled.
for a minute.
Yes, we have. We have tried to
Yeah.
be on each other's podcast for now. It's been a few months. So here we are. Here we are. Okay, so before we go too far, I love to ground us in with some breath. So if you are okay with following along and just taking a few moments here just to settle ourselves in. If you are following along on the podcast and you are driving, don't close down your eyes, but anybody else that feels comfortable closing down our eyes and just settling into your space here. So taking some deep breaths into your nose and out through your mouth, or whatever way your body feels like breathing in this moment. Just taking a couple minutes here just to settle our body, settle our mind, letting go of anything from before we walked into this space, you hit play, whatever it is that you were here with today, anything that you have to do after this, and just being present. I think so often we try to multitask, and while we are so good, especially if you're a woman here listening, we pride ourselves on being multitaskers, doing all the things, and we can be everything for everyone and do all the things at one time, but that often leaves us so scattered and so all over the place in our energy, in our life, in our mind, in our body. So if we can just take these moments, what I love to call the power of the pause, to just be with our breath, be with our body. This is a really great way to check in with yourself, check in with how you're feeling, what you need. Oftentimes in the busyness and the going and the doing, we don't often check in even with our body and what it needs. Does it need a drink of water? Does it need to move? What does it need? Especially if you're in a job where you are sitting a lot, just taking these moments where you, even if it's just 30 seconds to a minute or two, just being with your breath, slowing down your inhale and your exhale, making them a little bit longer, a little more intentional. And just finding what it is that your body needs, listening to your body speak. And if you're like, I don't even know what you're doing or how you even do that, just following along here, just taking these couple moments to be with your breath, getting quiet with your body. And if your mind starts going in all different places, just coming back to your breath, that inhale and the exhale. So just taking a couple more breaths here together. One more big, deep inhale. And if you feel up for it, a big audible exhale. Just letting it go. Thank you if you joined me in that breath. Thank you for being with us. Thank you, Casey, for joining me.
Thank you for that. No one ever starts off a pod like that. I'm like, let's go. I love that.
Thank you. I
Yes.
started doing it, and then for a while I got a little self-conscious, like, do people actually listen? Because a lot of times you're driving or you're doing other things while you're on a podcast. So I get that if people are like, I don't have time to do that, I can't do that, I fast forward through that. But other times
Yeah.
there's people that I have gotten feedback. They're like, I love that. Like, I love just listening to the opening where
I
we just
love
breathe.
it.
And I was like, perfect. Okay, well then I'm gonna keep doing it. So so here we are.
Yeah, it's a vibe. I love it.
All right. So we love to talk about what we are drinking here on the podcast. And I love what you were drinking today because we kind of talked about it before we started. So can you share with us what you were drinking and all about the thing?
Yeah, it was so funny. She's like, "You have a special drink today?" I was like, "Well, today it's an almond coffee, so not too exciting, but I've been on a hot chocolate bone broth kick, and I was like, let's start the podcast and then I'll tell you about it because everyone needs to know." So it sounds so gross, mixing cacao and bone broth. And when I first heard of it, I was like, that sounds so nasty. But I'm always up for anything that's like health and energy ascensions. Like, let's go. So if you use um a bone broth, beef is the best one to use because it tends to be less salty. So I just use a like Organica, or if you're making your own or something like that, bone broth. Make it like you normally would. So like your 2 tablespoons of like powder or your regular bone broth. Add your cacao to it. And then you could use like maple syrup or honey to sweeten it. And then you can put some cinnamon and some coconut milk, like the
Mm.
coconut cream, and you blend it, and it's like the frothiest, most delicious hot chocolate ever. So it's like a naughty treat, but you're also getting like 15 grams of gut healing protein. So I'm
Mm,
like,
I love it.
what? Now I'm addicted, and it's so good in the afternoon because it feels, honestly, it feels like naughty, but it's
Mm,
not.
I love that. I love it. I
I
get,
know.
especially this
You
time
gotta
of
try it.
year. It's like just to have
I know.
nice, fun, warm drinks. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, it's so good. So make your cacao like you normally would, but instead of water, you use bone broth.
Yeah,
Mm,
love it.
so
I'm gonna
good.
try it because we make our own bone broth, and I was like, I could do that. That sounds so, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna try
When
it.
I first told my husband, he was like, "That is so nasty. What are you doing mixing those two things?" Like, no, seriously, try it. He's like, "Oh my
Did
God,
he
it's
try
actually
it?
so good."
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah. And now the kids are drinking it. So like, oh, I love the whole like kids and hot chocolate and playing outside, but I'm also like, that's like sugary death chemicals. So
Yes.
like the alternative. So I started making this and they love it. And kids are not always gonna like sit down and drink a mug of bone broth. So it works and they have no idea.
Yes. Yes. And if you would tell them, I guarantee you, then they'd be like, oh gosh, that's gross. I'm not gonna drink it anymore. But maybe not. I don't know. So
Oh,
my
I
son,
frozen. Oh,
oh yeah, there you go.
bye.
See, it says mine is unstable, but I have like 3 bars. It's so weird. We'll pick up where we left off. I can edit that part up. Um, my son, what I was gonna say is my son is I've been trying to incorporate like vegetables into making things like ground beef, but we'll just like blend up the veggies like carrots and different things like that and throw them in the
Yeah,
ground beef
totally.
and then they won't even know. What was it? It was something I told him the other day and I was like, "Do you know what that is?" And he's like, "No." And he was eating. He got halfway through and I told him, "Shoot, I can't remember what it was." And he looked at it like he was so grossed out after he found out what it was. And I was like, "You've literally eaten half of it. You've eaten half of it. Like, seriously, it's all in your head. It's all in your head."
Totally. I'm a total veggie hider, and now I'm a bone broth hider.
Yeah.
I'm
There
like
you go.
the sneakiest.
Yes.
But whatever, you got to do what you got to do. My kids aren't too picky when it comes to eating, but there's just like, you got to eat the mushrooms. So you blend them up really small and then they don't even know. It's great.
True. Yep. Absolutely. Yep. 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 So, all right. Can you tell our audience who you are and yeah, just who you are in a nutshell?
Oh my gosh. It's the question. The question. It's so funny. I feel like I answer this different on every podcast that I'm on. And I feel like it's an ever-changing thing. What I say today is going to be different tomorrow. So permission to just be multidimensional.
Yes.
But hi, my name is KC Volard. I am a Kundalini business coach. Um, I adopted that title about 5 years ago. I've been in the business industry for about 12 years, building online businesses. I've built two now multiple seven-figure online businesses. But about 5 years ago, I started incorporating the world of Kundalini and energetics and life force energy. Because what I was finding is that no matter how much business strategy you have or how much you believe that you know what your purpose is, it is the energetics that gives you the results. And I'm living proof of that. And I mean, we can talk about all the business stuff later if that's what you want to jam on. But I knew that that was the thing. And Kundalini, I always say it's something that finds you. You don't find it. You hear the word, then it doesn't leave you alone. And then it just kind of compounds. You find yourself in a room with this woman on a stage and we're breathing and all of the things. If you've been in Jess's world for a minute, you've experienced Kundalini or you've been bit by the Kundalini bug. And so I knew that this was a tool and an art form and an ancient modality, a technology that had to be brought into the world of entrepreneurship, both because entrepreneurship is so hard on our nervous system. And I really believe that we can be successful without the expense of our nervous system. So bringing it in as a regulation tool, but also a tool just to connect deeper to who we are and our purpose and our path and what we're supposed to be doing. So that's where Kundalini business came from. Yes, they're two very different things, but I kind of created my own methodology through both of these pieces. And now the purpose really is guiding visionary women just like you, the trailblazers, the ones that are like, I've got this burning thing in my belly. I'm meant for big things. I'm going to turn my life into an absolute masterpiece. That's who I work with. It's activating those gifts, bringing them online and creating multiple six, seven-figure business. I don't believe that there's ever a cap. And I think that the world's so limitless. And it's honestly been such a blessing getting to work with you and all of the people just like you who that is what it is. It's like I know that I have something within me to change the fabric of the planet and I just want to build something legacy monumental from it.
Yeah.
In
And
a nutshell.
you're also a mama. You got
Yeah.
kids and you got a lot going on. It's not just that you're.
Yeah, yeah. So who am I without my business title? Um, I'm a mom of three little girls. They are my greatest teachers, as if you're a mom, you know. Um, they are so phenomenal. They're all so different. They're all so cool. And everything that I do truly is for them. Like I started this business 12 years ago when my first daughter so when I got pregnant with her, I was like living in my parents' basement, like on a mattress, like partying my life away, like that whole thing. I was like, I have no responsibilities, like in my early 20s. Ended up getting pregnant when Brody Lynn was 2 months old, my oldest. She was 2 months old, my parents' house sold. So now I'm like, okay, so I'm like pretty much jobless because I couldn't go back to my job. I'm a total like party bum. Now I have a newborn baby and I'm homeless and I have no money to my name, no savings. So like pooled together what I had, moved into this like mold infested condo. Didn't know it was mold infested at the time, found out afterwards. But it was just so run down. It was a whole thing. And I remember, and I know you've heard the story, but I feel like it's just one of those, like, it was the moment where I was like, life changes here. No other option. I'm not fucking doing this. This is not my life. And so she was only a few months old and I was sitting on my bedroom floor and she was there taking the last like $20 out of a Bible that I got when I was little to pay for diapers and groceries. And it was just like that, no money in the bank account. We're way in the negative on everything. And that was the last like piece of it. And I remember in that moment looking at her and being like, this is not how this story turns out. This is not how this story ends. I'm going to make a massive move for me, but also for you. And I am going to create something that you are so proud of. Like my mom mind was like, I will create something that you get to look at and you go, that's my mom. I'm so proud. And I had every odd stacked against me. You know what I mean? Like you look at the scenario, there was none of that happening in that moment in time. And that's what I did. I put one foot in front of the other, and I have built something that, I tell the story of 2 years ago, our first As She Rises live event. There was hundreds of women in the crowd. And I looked out over this crowd of women who were there, and my three little girls, my husband and my mom and everybody, my dad, everybody was standing at the back of the room. And I remember thinking to myself in that moment, this is the moment that I said that I would create on that bedroom floor, where those girls, like, it just, oh my God, it rips my heart out of my chest. I feel like bawling my eyeballs out. I've cried too many tears over this. We're over it. Looking back at me, and I know that they were like, that's mom. Like, look at what she created. And I was like, that's the thing. That's the thing I worked so hard for at my own pace, my own cadence, my own struggle. And it has just been such a phenomenal ride. It has not been easy, but it has been something legacy. And that's why I teach everything inside the As She Rises world is about legacy, luxury, life force energy. So it's legacy. Like, what do you want to leave behind? What are you living now that makes, those moments where your little ones look back at you and go, that's my mom. Like, that's my legacy. That's what's important. And the luxury is like, what do you get to do in this lifetime? It's not just what you leave behind. Like, hell, I want to live an amazing freaking life in this lifetime too. So what is success and luxury to you on your terms? Life force energy is that power that we all have. And so, yes, long-winded story to answer the fact of, yes, I am a mom of three little girls. They're phenomenal. I live in a tiny little mountain town in BC, Canada with my hubby, and we spend a lot of time outdoors, and I really value freedom and spaciousness and the slowness of life. And you really get to have it all. I'm like a walking oxymoron.
I love it. And your story gave me goosebumps. Like when you were telling that, I was like, oh, I can feel it. I can feel it. And it's just amazing. And you're truly an inspiration for so many people. And I think that's why you have done so well, is that you live your story out loud, and
Yeah,
you
you
have
bet.
built yourself, not just like you talked about, not just one six-figure business, but now even more so. So can you talk
Yeah.
about, because I know the story, but my viewers probably don't.
Yeah.
So you had built a business prior to your As She Rises business right now. And
Yeah.
so can you talk about that a little bit? And then why did you decide, when it was doing so well, to burn it down?
Right? That is the question I get so often. People like, you had a like $1 million earning business and you just burnt it to the ground. And I think it is a really, really important point, and I'm excited to share that with you guys. So from that moment on the floor, like, I need to make some changes. I need to, I was also losing my baby weight, right? Like early 20s, that's the most important thing after you have that baby, is to get your body back and get back in your jeans. So I started at home workout programs. That's how I ended up getting involved in a network marketing company. I love network marketing. I think that it is a brilliant turnkey option for people who don't really know what their thing is yet, but they know that they want to build something online. That there's so many avenues of entrepreneurship, early stage entrepreneurship that people can get involved in. So I know that there's a lot of negative, like, talk around network marketing or affiliate marketing. And I'm like, man, if that's the thing that gets your foot in the door to build something monumental in your lifetime, full send. I learned so much from building that business. So over the course of about 6 years, almost 7 years, I built out a network marketing company. We were one of the top teams in Canada, multiple seven-figure business, like speaking on the stages, doing all of the things, right? Like, made it in the network marketing world. Um, and that's all I ever wanted, was I wanted the income. I wanted the lifestyle. Speaking on the stages was so cool. The part of me that I had not yet healed, that needed the validation, that needed the success worn on my sleeve like a badge of honor, to believe that I was worthy, hustling my ass off to get there. Now, do I regret the hustle? No. Are we allowed to do it in this stage of life where it's only like pleasure-based model? Absolutely not. No hustle. Hard work, yes. Hustle, no. And so there was just a lot of things, I think, behind the scenes that I also learned from building out that business and what would not get to come with me in the second stage of entrepreneurship. But yes, so built a super successful business. A lot of it for the right reasons, some of it for the wrong reasons. And I totally honor that. And I love to speak on that, and full transparency in my world, like I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it was all beautiful, because sometimes it's not. And I think when we do have that wounding and we do seek validation and those types of things like safety, I was using money for safety. And it wasn't until I healed a lot of that stuff that I started to look at the business and go, I built a lot of this out of integrity from my own values. And a lot of this is just feeling out of alignment. And so that's where a big part of the transition came from. Universe was kind of like, hey, there's more for you, two-sided, right? Like, this business model is no longer working for you. So you either have to make some adjustments, or you're going to burn out because we're out of alignment. And the other piece of it was just, I had learned so much about energetics and about mindset and growth and entrepreneurship and leadership and business and everything. I was like, I want to teach more than just like fitness programs. You know what I mean? So there was that piece of the calling too, where it was, we are allowed to outgrow what we're teaching. And that was a big part of it. I ignored that for probably close to a year and a half. And then, of course, when we ignore what the universe is saying to us, make some changes. You're made for more. There's more to it than this. What are we still doing here? This doesn't feel good in my body, but I'm making the money and I have the house and all the things. On paper, it looks great. And I think that's why we look at people who are successful that are like, I'm so dead inside that it's not worth it. And I think people don't fully understand what that feels like. So universe showed up, as it does, gave me severe postpartum anxiety after my second daughter was born, which was the slowdown that I would never have allowed myself to have, because I was still hustling. I was go, go, go. You know what I mean? And so being forced to slow down, really reevaluate my values in my life. What do you want? What is important to you? And what feels good? What doesn't feel good? So that sacred slowdown period is where I went, okay, I see what As She Rises is becoming. And at the time it was called Empower Project. It was not yet As She Rises. That rebrand came about a year later. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is the scariest thing ever. I remember that conversation with my husband on the couch, and I'm bawling. And I was like, I think I want to burn this business to the ground and become a spiritual business coach. And he was like, oh my God. Like, I knew that like this whole postpartum situation was bad, but I didn't think it was like this bad. Like, holy shit, Casey, like, what are you talking about right now? You're burning this to the ground. And I said, if I don't burn it to the ground and walk away from it, then I will always have an out. I will always have one foot in another option. When it gets hard building out my legacy, because legacy is hard. Building a business, easy. Building a movement, building a legacy, it's fucking hard. And so I knew that. And if I didn't fully take myself out of it, I don't believe that I would have went fully headfirst into new business. So burned it to the ground, walked away from a very lucrative business that was supporting my family, and went into a business where I was making $0, had no idea what I was doing. And I hired my first mentor. Side note, people ask, key to your success, I invest in myself at the top tier that I possibly can, and then some, the entire time. I've never not been in mentorship. I believe that mentorship is everything. I believe that the speed and the cadence in which you want to grow and move and be held and supported is the support system that you have. So I hired my first mentor for like $8,000, then another couple of programs around the $2,000 mark. And then I took a certification, $12,000. So I'm already like $20,000-$30,000 into mentorship, still $0 my business. So naturally my husband's like, oh my God, like this is so bad. But it was one foot in front of the other. And that's what I created. I started putting out programs. I made my Facebook group. I did all the things. I built a business, and we just had As She Rises' fifth birthday and have generated like over $4 million in this business in the last 5 years from nothing. As a mom of three with no post-secondary education, so yeah, it's been a huge ride, and I think that that's just really important that any you will find parts of your story in my story, no matter where you're at in your life, even if it's not entrepreneurship. If the universe or God or whatever you believe in is nudging, like there's more for you, this isn't working, something feels off, trust it, because there is something there. And it's not until we give ourselves that permission, like full permission to explore, full permission to trust, full permission to see where this path is asking me to go, that you will find magic. That when we're clinging and gripping so tightly to an outcome or easy or this is working, so why would I change it? When we are gripping so hard, there's no room to find out what else there might be out there. Yeah.
Such a good point. You have such a great story, and there's so much, like you said, people will find something inside your story from there, and I resonate so much with your story. I think that's why obviously we found each other. I found you, whatever it was. I don't even remember how I found you.
I have no idea, but I feel like THC was the first thing that you, or
No, I
did
did
you take
CCM.
CCM before that?
CCM.
Man, you're like, oh, gee, you've been here
I've
forever.
been here for, yeah, it's at least been
That's
2.5 years or so, I would think. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I have no
Yeah.
idea.
I mean,
I have
I'm
no
not,
idea how everyone in the Ashuraza's world finds me, but it's so aligned, it freaks me out.
yeah.
Like when we all get together, I'm like, how? But this is magnetism, like for all of your listeners, when you know who you are and you trust who you are and you're in mastery every day of just like, I love me and the parts that I don't, I'm willing to accept me and I'm in full exploration of who I can become as my best self. It's so magnetic, and you attract people that are on that same frequency,
Yeah.
right? That love those same things about you, that are willing to accept the quirky things. Like it's just fascinating how
Yeah.
it works.
It is.
Yeah.
It is so fascinating. I feel like there's so many, and because of being in your world, I've met so many beautiful
Oh my gosh, yeah.
other people, like human beings. And it's just, I've created such intimate, amazing relationships with these people through the internet, which is the most beautiful thing as well. Like what we can create through the internet. And then it's even better when you can go meet them in person. So because we've met now at the certification at the end, we had for TAC, we had I don't know if you call it a retreat, whatever, at the end of it. And so we got to meet in person there, and then at your live event and just meeting all the other business women, humans that were there as well. It's just, yeah, there's just something so magical
Cool.
about it. Yeah.
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 It's so funny because everyone will say that. Like, there's a lot of business coaches out there who have large followings.
Mm-hmm.
We have a tight knit community. Like, I have had so many people, even speakers, come to speak at, As She Rises Live, and they're like, how have you created a like a sisterhood? Like, when you say sisterhood, that's not a buzzword that's getting thrown around. It is like crazy the connections that are built. And honestly, it's fascinating for me for two reasons. One, I had to heal so much of my own sister wounds to be able to build this. Like my relationship with women growing up, I was bullied as a teen. Like did not have this experience, did not have a good experience with women in my early teens, in my late teens, in my 20s, even into my 30s. It's like, it's just so fascinating, the dynamic with women. And so I had a lot of healing to do to even feel safe in spaces with other powerful women. And that's why I teach it so big now. Like, if you are not healing your sister wounds and feeling like you can be in your power and allow other women to be in their power, and it's not triggering, it's not not competitive, all of those codes have to be healed and dissipate in order for you to be successful in business. I really believe that. And As She Rises it blows my mind, honestly, every day, the connections that are built in there. And I'm so proud of it. And I'm so proud that when a woman enters our space, or anyone enters our space, they automatically feel that love and connection, and it feels like home to be there. And everyone is just so accepting, and you can bring all of yourself there. And it's just everything that I could have ever wanted as a woman growing up. And it's everything that I have prayed for my 3 daughters to experience in this lifetime.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you brought up the sisterhood part, because that truly, I think that is one of the core reasons that I was aligned with you, that I was put into your world, was for the healing of the sisterhood wounds, because I had gone through something really, I would call it traumatic for myself, in that I had this core group of women that I loved being around. And it was a very hard situation that I went through. It was during the separation of my husband and then I lost the friend group as well. And so, I mean, obviously there was lots of other sisterhood wounding that I had, just feminine relationships growing up and things like that. But that wounding was very deep. And I kind of was at this place where I really was isolating myself. I was like, I don't want to create any more relationships with women. I just don't want to. Like, I was burned so bad. And these were like deep, deep wounding. And coming into your world and being and feeling and leaning into this sisterhood and learning about that and learning about the healing that can be done, and then feeling it from the other women in the space, really helped me heal really deeply. And so I think that's what I needed at the time. And that's what's kept me in this space too, is just this, I want to now then create that myself, because it was such an influential part of my journey, is knowing that I can be alongside these other women and we don't have to compete with each other. We can be here for each other. There can be 2 breathwork people. We could be standing side by side and we're both doing breathwork, but your people are going to find you. My people are going to find me. We can co-collaborate together. We can do it. Like, we can have all of it. And I can promote and support you, and you can promote and support me. And it's not going to take away from you or me or anybody else. Like, when I rise, you rise. When you rise, I rise. Like, we rise together. It's just such a beautiful thing. And so I think that is what has truly kept me here in this space, is this deep community of sisters and this deep healing that happens when we come together and learn and grow together. Like, it's just so beautiful.
Thank you for that reflection. I appreciate it more than you will ever know, because it is such a it is such a heart tie for me in this. That's also part of that legacy, it's like, what am I leaving behind? People will remember the sisterhood and the connection, and that's everything. And there's so little competition. And I love what you were talking about, how I can do breath work and she can do breath work, and we can collaborate instead of being like, oh my God, the industry is so saturated. Like, ew, why are we even saying industry and saturated when it comes to our gifts? And I think it's so cool that we're seeing this reawakening of women in their power, women, using their medicine in whatever way, whether it's breath work or Kundalini or motherhood or, whatever it is that you do. I just think it's so special. And so that's why As She Rises Live, I actually did a full sister circle, which was so crazy. I was like, how are we going to do a sister circle with over 200 women? Like, what does this look like? I've done it and you've done that with me, where we've done sister circles and you do the rituals and share cacao, and like, it's very intimate with maybe max 20 women. It's like, how do we do this on a mass scale? And it was so funny, because I knew at As She Rises that in the afternoon on the first day we were going to have sister circle. And it was not until probably 2 weeks before my team was like, Casey, what are we doing here? And I was like, I don't know. It's going to come through and I got to trust it. It's going to come through and I got to trust it. So permission, guys, stop over planning. I had in person over 200 women, didn't have a clue what I was going to do, but I was like, it's going to come through and I got to let it lead from my heart, not force, right? Like, trust and pleasure over pressure. You pressure it, it's tainted energy. And so we kind of went with it. And that's why I was like, order the bracelets, and I don't know what we're doing. And we dedicate at She Rises Live a full like 2 hour piece specifically on healing sister wounds, what they are, how to heal them, why it's important, and then going through ceremony together to begin to heal that wound. And it was so powerful. The feedback we got was like, that was one of my favorite parts of that whole weekend. Not the speakers that came from all over the world, not that, I mean, it was like, yes, those parts are amazing, but it was really, really cool, to hear that feedback. And I think women are not only craving now connection just to feel connection, but women are also craving, I know in our circumstance, especially entrepreneurship, it's like, I want to feel truly powerful, and I don't want to trigger everybody else. I don't want to offend everybody else. I don't want to piss everybody off with my bigness, my boldness, my too loudness, my fucking brilliance, right? And that's what happens is we feel if there is another woman in her power, we look at her and go, I'm less than, I'm not enough, I feel triggered, she's too much. It's this whole thing, and we could talk on witch wounds all day. But what healing the sister wound is about is not just kumbayaing, sitting together and being like, I see you and I honor you. It's you feel like you can say, here's what makes me brilliant. Here's what makes me beautiful. Here's what makes me powerful. Here's what makes me magnificent, stardust. And another woman receiving that on the other end, not deflecting, not feeling triggered, not feeling less than, not feeling where she feels like my power witnesses your power and your power witnesses my power. And when we can do that, my God, imagine what the planet would be like if we all started moving like that. So that has been a big part of healing sister wounds in the As She Rises space, is not only just having sacred sisterhood to be held in the hard things, because that too, entrepreneurship and motherhood and being a woman is fucking hard sometimes. It really is about reactivating a power that has been hiding inside of you that we've suppressed and hidden away because it's too much. Nah, let it out, and we're all gonna let it out. And then we do. And like, oh my gosh, that room was like pulsating. I felt like I left my body.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's not that I want to speak to this too, because if there's anybody out there listening that's like, oh, I don't know, it's not that I don't ever get triggered. It's not that people don't ever get triggered by another person's success or by another person's something. But what I have learned, what I've taken away from this space is that I can now go to a person who has triggered me and I've had some really great conversations with people inside your space, and another really close friend that I've met since being in your space as well, just saying like, hey, what you said something, it really triggered me. Like, I would love to talk through it because I don't know what's happening inside my body. I don't know, like, I don't want to have this animosity towards you. I don't want to feel a way towards you. I don't want to feel jealous. I don't want to feel, because I know that we rise together. So like, can we talk this out? Can you help me like figure out what's going on? Maybe it's something in you. Maybe it's probably mostly something in me, but it's recognizing and doing the work and saying like, okay, we can have hard conversations with each other because we are both here willing and able to do the work, and we are here to heal these wounds. So let's heal them together and work through this together. And
it gives me goosebumps. It gives me goosebumps. Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's not that I don't get triggered.
Right.
Yeah, we get triggered. We're human. Like, things rub me. It's prickly. We're all prickly humans on each other. It's about, being able to have hard conversations. It's about being able to pause and say, what about this not is triggering me because I'm offended? What is triggering me because it's something that I desire to have or desire to look at, or that I shame myself for, guilt myself for, make myself not enough for? And having that higher, level of consciousness, I guess, call it higher level of consciousness, to look at it and be like, that's very interesting. And I can bring it up with her and she goes, oh my gosh, that triggered me too. Or like, oh my gosh, this is, and you start this conversation, all of a sudden it's like it all alchemizes, and what's left is power and peace and honesty and values. And it's just so cool. The amount of hard conversations that I have had to have. And let me tell you, like leading this movement of people with the sisterhood and the triggery and the power and the holy fuck, like
Yeah.
being the leader of that has sometimes been real hard because you guys think you're having hard conversations. Imagine the shit that lands in my inbox every day. And so it's made me work every day to be able to hold that standard. And I think when I hold it, other people see that and they go, well, that's how we react. And this is how we communicate. And this is how we hold space. And this is how we, and I think that that's what's so special about As She Rises. It's so safe, not because we bypass the hard shit. It's because we're all in it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so cool.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, I can't even imagine I haven't built I mean, I feel like maybe I have built my capacity up to that point, but it's like I'm still
Yeah.
having these conversations with people like, okay, I got triggered, and but like holding that I mean, you've got a lot of
Yeah.
people in your space, so that's a lot of people that you've got to hold it for. So, yeah.
You know what it is, Jess? It's not holding other people's shit, it's becoming a master communicator.
Mm,
And
yeah.
communication is not just out of your mouth, communication is your ears. And I think people forget that communicating things is not just you saying things, it's becoming a master listener. And I am so bad at listening. I have ADHD and like a million other things. And I'm like, oh, you know, and like you're listening and you want to chime in
Yeah.
and you want to project and you want to say your piece and you want to fucking be right because that's how we
Yes.
are. It's feeling all of those things in your body and still just listening and then going, where do I see myself in this? Where have I played a role in this? You know, and it's not holding it because I don't want to hold anybody else's shit. I got enough of my own.
Right.
I am not holding nothing of nobody's. People say like, oh my God, how do you hold so much in your company? And as a mom, like, I'm not fucking running around holding anything. I delete it. I delegate it. I communicate. I let it go. If it's not necessary, I let it go and master communication. So I'm really just listening always. How can we be better? How can we improve? How is there something that I'm not seeing? And from there, taking brave, bold action. That's it, you know? And so you don't have to hold a lot as a leader. You have to be a really good communicator.
Yeah.
That's it.
So true.
And
So
sometimes you do get triggered and you just have to let it go because you're also working with so many different personality styles and dynamics. You have people in your space whose values do not necessarily align with yours. They might completely clash with yours. Like I have, you know, private clients, I have people in our inner circle space who there's a lot of things where we could agree that our values are total polar opposites.
yeah.
But the things that really matter that we are in relationship for, it just works. It's no different than a marriage,
Yeah.
right? It's like one partner totally believes this, one partner totally believes this. And it's like, can we put that aside, agree to disagree, learn enough about that value from a different perspective that I can honor that in that person, say, I see why that would be your thing. I see why, you know, and it doesn't we don't agree, so let's just agree to disagree and let that not affect the beauty of the other 99% of our relationship. Yeah. Cheryl and I actually had a podcast episode last week on inclusivity and just like divergence and different things. And it'll be out on my podcast. It's such a good listen because we go so far into this piece on differentiating values and how you can still be a safe space for people.
Yeah, that's a great conversation because it can be triggering. It can be, excuse me, so many
Totally.
things. But yeah, if you can it's almost like taking that emotional piece out of it too, where you just get super heightened and it's like, okay, let's backtrack that a little bit and get back into like what is actually happening, not the emotion of it. But yeah.
There's a time for logic and there's a time for emotion.
Yeah.
You know, and when we skew those two things, that's where feelings get hurt or shitty choices are made. Right? It's like wrong logic when we should have been following emotion or wrong emotion when we should have been just following logic. And I think when you can differentiate those two is when you just make kinder choices for the better of everybody. And I think even if you're not an entrepreneur, you can take so much from this conversation. Like in marriage, oh my gosh, it's not sacrificing your values. It's honoring that somebody else has their own set of values and that I can honor and respect that those are your values. And do we have the other 90% matched up? Like, can we like match everything up except for this 10%? Okay, the 10% just doesn't fucking matter. Let it go. And if you're not willing to let the 10% go and honor it and actually respect it, not just like brush it under the rug, but truly just look at it from a heightened perspective and go, I can honor that in you. I don't agree, but I will honor it in you that it is yours. Let it go, file it away so that you can enjoy the other 90%. And if you can't, then the other 90% may not be enough. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that overlaps into leadership, entrepreneurship, building a team, client relationships, marriage, all of it. Yeah. And even my kids, like Brody Lynn is now 12. She's going to be 13 right away, which is what? How in the hell did that happen? How do I have a 13-year-old? I don't know. I know that you get this because I found out how old your kids were and I was like, were you 7 when you had them? I'm so confused. I still think that you are defying aging somehow, and I will find the secret. I will get it out of you one day. I look at her and, like she's 13 and I think this also applies there. She is building and fortifying her own set of values, And so there's going to be a lot of things that we don't agree on, but I can look at them and go, those are your values. I honor them and respect them. And if they are not hurting you and they are not detrimental to you, then who am I to challenge you on your value system?
Yeah.
And man, it made parenting so much easier because I'm not constantly getting fucking triggered. Teenagers are prickly. Like they are. Like, oh my gosh, a teenage girl? Are you kidding? Like every wound, like right? They bring up all the shit. It's fascinating, really.
It is. And that's why this last few years of our lives have been challenging in that way of learning to navigate and learning not to take it personal and learning not, like they're just finding their way and they don't 100% know how to communicate everything effectively and in a way that is not triggering and is a way that's not, their defiance sometimes just comes from them wanting to be heard. But then oftentimes, as parents, we take that as like, well, they're being so disrespectful or they're not listening to me. And it's, we've had definitely our struggles with that. And yeah, it's definitely an interesting road. That's for sure. Yes.
I'm reading this book right now and I'm like, oh my gosh, what a time to forget the title. I can't remember what it's called. I will send it to you. And if anybody else on here wants it, just plunk it in the show notes. But I'm reading this book right now on transitioning girls from adolescence into adulthood. And it is so good. And that's what it is. It talks about all of the ways that we think our child is being defiant, but what they're actually doing and how their brain is developing and why they do certain things. And it just, oh my gosh, it's given me so much perspective as a mom in certain situations where every part of me, like when when your blood is boiling and your head just wants to pop right off your body and you're like, I'm going to lose my mind on you, and then I'm going to feel bad that I did it. So I'm just going to shut my mouth and I don't know what to do. It's like it truly is like a manual for those moments. And I feel like it has been so helpful. Oh, why can I not remember? It's fine. I will send it to you. But it's really,
I feel like we could have used that a few years ago because I've taken things where I'm like, I understand. I've been a girl. I know that emotions, your hormones are all over the place. Your emotions, you don't think logically. You're literally emotional and just you literally react with your emotions, not with your logical brain. 99% of the time. Like that's just how as teenagers, that's how I was. So, trying to relay that to my husband as well, like, hey, we got to just give her a little bit.
They just don't get it.
They don't get it. And it has caused so much division in their relationship.
You bet.
Yeah. And that's been the hardest road lately is just the division in a relationship when as a man, as a guy, they just don't understand that emotional piece. Like they're just not wired like we are as women. They're just not. So
totally.
yeah, that's
I feel you. I feel you on that.
Okay, so I love to ask people on the podcast, what do you think is your soul's purpose here on Earth at this time?
Dang, I love this.
Yeah.
Okay, what is my soul's purpose? I
And I know
feel
it
like
can
I,
change. It can change, obviously, from
yeah,
when you
I
were younger
feel
to
like
now. And
it
yeah.
changes every single day. You know what's really funny is so at As She Rises live this year, it was at the so on the Saturday night. If you guys don't know what As She Rises is, I hope that you all come because it's just a whole production. It's a phenomenal event. But on the Saturday night, we have your higher self party, and you get to dress up as your highest self and come, and we have like DJs and mocktails, and you get to what we did this year, we did breath work and a like it's just tapping into the energy of your highest self and really embodying her and being seen as her by other people. And it's just the coolest party. It was so funny because my mom came up to me and I was wearing this like totally see-through bodysuit that was just rhinestones. Like it looked like my body was just only wearing rhinestones. And I had like you got to see the pictures. It's so funny.
Yeah.
So my mom comes up to me and she's all dressed in her higher self outfit as well. And she's like, you know what is so funny, Casey? She said, usually when you ask a child, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? They're like, I want to be a veterinarian or I want to be a firefighter or whatever. She's like, I asked you, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you said to me, I don't want to grow up. I just want to party and I want to make lots of money. I want to have lots of money and I just want to party. I don't want to grow up. I just want to party. And she's like, oh my God. And she's like, and I had this moment today where I look around and you actually fulfilled your
Oh,
childhood dream. Like all you do is party, make lots of money. And it's just so fascinating because you're, DJing this party and it's like everything that you wanted to be when you were little is a living, breathing thing now.
mm,
And so what do I think my purpose is? I think that it's evolving every day. I think that I came to this planet to just be proof that you can be all of yourself and have it all, whatever that means to you. And so purpose is a funny thing. I think we're going to we have this idea, we flip over a rock and it's like, oh, well, there's my purpose. Look at it. I will just pursue this and then I'll be happy. And it's not like that. It's like, flipping over this rock and going, ooh, I like what's under that. I'm going to try it on and making that one of the stepping stones and flipping over another one and trying it and going, meh, I don't think this needs to be part of the path, but it was cool. Right. So it's like building this pathway of your life with all these different stones that you try on and you're curious. And like, I look at my life now, what I've created over the past 10 years. I'm like, that's the purpose. Can I give it a title? No. Can I explain it? Kinda, but it's like it's a knowing, it's a feeling where like this is a yes. And is it always going to be a yes? Maybe not. Purpose can change, but I think purpose really is what feels yummy, what feels yes, what feels like a pull, what feels expansive. That's your purpose. And I think when people are in that energy and they're taking action from that energy, whatever that means for them, that is what creates purpose for everybody, creates impact for everybody. It's permission for everybody. And so for me in my path, it's like, yeah, so we're partying, we're building, multiple seven-figure businesses, visionary women. I'm guiding them. It's amazing. I think that it's just as much of a purpose if you want to be a stay-at-home mom and that's your yes. And you look at my life and you go, that's not it. And am I wrong for that? Fuck no. Don't let anybody tell you that it's wrong. If your yes, your pull is homeschooling your babies and living on a farm and that's your sacred yes, that's your pull, that's your purpose. And chase it until it's not and you get curious for the next thing. So I think purpose is just it's a very interesting topic that will forever be evolving. But to answer your question, what is my purpose? I really think it is bringing women together in sacred power, but not in a kumbaya way. Let's not make healing heavy. It's making healing fun. It's sexy. It's alive. It's like, I am just the walking permission slip. I will be weird. I will be wild. I will go first so that you can look at me and be like, yeah, she can do it. We can all for sure have a slice, like, well, she's a fucking hot mess. Let's go. And for right now, it feels like a pull. It feels like a yes. And that's it.
yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that story about your mom like
Isn't that cute?
witnessing in real time, being like, wait,
I
this is
know.
what she wanted to be when she grew up, and she's literally doing it. Like, not
Yeah.
just
And
that
she
your
was
kids
probably
see
like, when I was younger, she was probably like, oh my God, like you can't do that. You know what I mean? And it's like
Yes.
the little things. She was so terrified of me as a teenager. Naturally, I was wild. Like I was that teenager. You know what I mean? Like she had all the reason in the world to be concerned. I was super respectful. I was not a bad teenager, but I was wild. Like life was just meant to be fun. That's it. No responsibility, full send. And I still am very much like that, even as a mom and a wife and a business owner. It just keeps getting crazier. And so I think even in my teen years, when I was like, I want to be a DJ and go to music festivals. She's like, oh my God. But like, I found God on those dance floors. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that was a pull for me.
Yeah.
Dancing, moving, music, heartbeats, community. It's like that's where I found that first bit of community. That's where I started to feel alive and all of the things. So I think it's like all the little nuggets that my mom was probably like, oh my God, she's gonna amount to nothing, like be a drug addict on the streets in Vancouver, like some crazy thing. I don't know what she probably thought, but
Well,
it all
especially after you had your first baby too. She
yeah,
probably,
oh, for
oh
sure.
gosh,
She
she's
was
living
probably
this
just
out.
like right on, like par for the fucking course, Casey. Like 21, you're pregnant. Like, oh man. But I think Brody Lynn also, it's like universe gives you what you need when you need it, not because you asked for it and you manifested something. The universe gives you what you need when you need it to grow how you need to grow. That's my belief. Even the shitty things, even the hard things, it's like, no, you're just given what you need in that moment to grow into who you've got to be. And so she was given to me at a period in my life where it's like, maybe, just scale back a little bit on this particular area and go into entrepreneurship. That was the next high. Do you know what I mean? That was the next, like,
Yeah.
oh my God, the music festival experience. But now I'm building something and it's all relative. Yeah, I just think about that moment with my mom and she was just like, "Oh my God, you actually like built a multi-million dollar thing just partying and you don't want to grow up." Like, what? Who does that? Like, yeah, that's actually really cool. So I was so grateful that she shared that because I just giggled. And I look at my middle daughter who is so much like Carson.
Yeah.
That's Carson to a T. I'm like, that girl, if I asked her what she wants to be, she'd be like, I just want to party. And I'm like, you get it, girl.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
who are we to say that that's wrong? And so, purpose, yeah, trust what your heart is pulling you towards and don't let anybody make you wrong for it.
Yeah. I'm curious. What are you in birth order? Are you oldest? Are you youngest? Are you?
I have a younger sister, Taylor, who's now
Yeah.
my right hand
Yeah.
assistant in my
Yeah.
company. She is 5 years younger than me. My mom remarried when I was 12, and my stepdad, I call him my dad. My dad had two daughters who are older. So I've got
Okay.
two older sisters, one younger sister. We are four girls. So I know what's coming
Yeah.
for my life because I have lived it. Yeah.
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 Uh,
But I'm
I'm
definitely the older sister. And growing up, I was definitely like, I took that role very seriously. You know what I mean?
yes. It's interesting to me because I am a firstborn and
Yeah.
I am very much like the mothery, had to do everything right, like whatever, like the wild child party is more like the middle kids in my family, I would say. So
Yeah.
it's just interesting to me. Like birth orders is interesting to me and just seeing where how people grew up and like where they ended up in life based on their birth order. I don't know. It's just very,
Yeah.
very interesting.
So it's really interesting that you say that because growing up until I was like when I was younger, up until the age of, probably 12,
Yeah.
13,
Yeah.
was definitely my role. So I had like my dad grew up with an alcoholic father, very much single mom parenting, whether they were still together or after my mom had left. So I definitely played that role as well. Nurturer took on a lot of, and I think that's where a lot of my people pleasing, all
Mhm.
of these things that I say that I've healed, like I'm
Mhm.
so transparent about this because I think that and TAC is very much this, right? It's like the shadow,
Yeah.
how to heal the wounds that are holding you back from feeling completely liberated and alive in your life. And for me, it was a lot of that, like having to protect the emotions of my mom, protecting the emotions of my little sister, protecting savior. I have a savior
Yeah.
complex in every, oh my God. And, people pleasing was like, I was so worried about people being upset because then I failed my job to take care of everyone else's emotions. It doesn't matter who it is, the guy at the grocery store, I got to take care of his emotions too, because that's all I knew. And so that was something I really had to clean up in my own life, relationships, obviously. And it would have affected my entrepreneurship journey if I wouldn't have cleaned it up there too, because then we hold the weight of everybody else's emotions, dysregulation, what they can't handle. So very much so that way until my mom got remarried. And I think there was a lot of dynamics that probably played into that. A little bit of like, fuck you, kind of like, you don't want to pay attention to me, then I'll go get my attention elsewhere. So I think that's kind of how like the rebellious teenager, that's where it came from. But the party girl, like feeling alive in every cell of my being, that was like born and bred into me. I was a Spice Girl. Like I was convinced, like
I love
I
it.
for sure was every single Spice Girl. Don't make me
I
pick
was
one.
gonna
I'm
ask
all of
which
them. Like,
one.
let's go. No way. Well, if I had to pick one, it would have been Posh Spice for
Yeah.
sure. But like all of them, no way. I'm multidimensional.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really, really interesting just how our adolescence and everything that we go through and our generational trauma and everything really does model and shape our upbringing. And I think that we are the first generation of women that's really openly talking about our wounding and therapy. And like, are you kidding me? Our parents, our moms were not talking about like
No.
this was not a common thing. And so it ends with us.
Yeah.
Everyone listening to this podcast, it ends with us. Whether you're a parent or you're not, this cycle ends with us. And it's just so exciting to be pioneering it with all of
Yeah.
you.
So
Yeah.
can I ask you about your mom? Because this is interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because your mom's been at your events. She
Yeah.
has been on a couple calls I've seen and things like that. So doing this work, when you talk about, like our mom's generations didn't do this. And my
Yeah.
mom still to this, and if you're listening, mom, I love you, but there's not a lot of
We're
like,
like, my moms are
right.
listening. We love you. That's not what we're saying.
But like her to talk about, like there was no talking, we didn't talk about emotions, feelings, we didn't talk about the things that went wrong. I truly don't feel like she's worked through a lot of trauma she had in her own life.
Sure.
And so having your mom at these events and in your world learning what you do and really wanting to know what you do, like how has that helped her? Like has she started doing, can you tell, has she started doing her own healing? Have you guys been able to have good conversations about this and things?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Thank you for asking this. This is huge because a lot of people are probably wondering this. Um, yes, yes, yes. So much to unpack here. So first of all, yeah, my mom is my biggest fan, my biggest cheerleader, my best friend, like she's at every event, she's on all the calls. But I think that she also really respects and honors the work that I do. And I think that she wants a slice of that. And so it's both and like she supports me as her daughter doing big things and she's there. But that also doesn't mean that like I don't still get triggered by her not doing certain work or that she doesn't get triggered by that sister wound, right? Like that she doesn't get triggered by me and my power, maybe doing things that she wished that she could have done or saying things that she wishes that she could have said. And it's no different, like mother-daughter relationship. This is no different than the way you would get triggered or the way that we would get triggered by friends. It's all the same. And so me doing this work has been really, really powerful because I'm not going to go to her and say, here's all the ways that you're not doing your work. But what it has given me is this ability to hold where maybe she hasn't done the work or that she doesn't have awareness of it yet. And that's okay. It's like I can hold big space when she gets triggered for certain things. It's like, I see where that's coming from. I love you. I love you. That's it. I forgive you. I love you. I honor you. Like we can coexist and not everything is going to be perfect. So I think me doing the work, yes, she's started to see a lot of her, and yeah, so now she's doing a lot of inner child work, and it's bringing up a lot of things. And yes, she will come to me now and say, I am so sorry for this and this 10 years ago, not a fucking chance would she have taken ownership of that, and neither would have I.
Yeah.
Right? No way. But now, because I talk openly about the mistakes that I'm making with my kids and the mistakes that I make with other women, the mistakes that I make, like, we're just really open about it. It's given her permission to start digging into it. So yeah, there is more forgiveness now. But that doesn't mean that we're ever going to get to a place where our moms don't trigger the fuck out of us. And that everybody listening, it's not like all of a sudden you just arrive at this like unicorn place where you and your mom are perfect. There is just so much generational trauma and lineage trauma and mother wound like that. That guy runs real deep, and our generation is going to scratch the surface on this. We might in this generation get to the point where we can hold somebody else's triggers. That's about the depth. So we can't go at it like hoping and praying that everything will be better. It will be many, 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 many generations before we truly can heal a lot of this stuff. But yeah, I mean, and I also really honor the role that my mom has taken in my success, right? It's not like she just sat back and did nothing. Like, she's been my biggest cheerleader every step of the way. And so when I joke about like my mom being like, oh my God, she's completely lost her mind, like she was always like, yes, go be safe, do your thing, be safe, open communication. My mom has always had, never got mad. I could phone her any time of the day or night and she would be there as a safe space. Like, there's so many things that she did right to develop my identity, you know? And I think that we can always find things in our moms that they did right, and go as far as to go and tell your mom what she did right. Don't just, pick apart what she did wrong, because there's going to be both. And I am a mom, and I would way rather my kids be like, here's all the things that you did right, and I accept your plea for forgiveness for all the shit that you did wrong. That's it. Because I'm not going to be perfect.
No matter what we try to do, even if you've done all the healing work, even if you're here and you're like, I've healed so much of myself, like, there's still going to be trauma that our kids have because of generations past, and because of maybe they're not.
I always joke, I'm just collecting all these like nervous system tools and healing tools so that I can maybe spend a little bit less of my kids for therapy. Like, no, that's not true. We are going to mess it up for sure.
Yeah.
And what is messing it up? I feel like they need the lessons that like, who are we to come in and play God when it comes to our kids' karmic lessons? And they chose us. At the end of the day, you chose your mom and your dad. Even if it doesn't matter if your parents are alcoholics, they're emotionally unavailable, if they are, it doesn't matter. You chose them. I chose both of my parents in the way that I chose them, because that is what was going to make me who I am today, with the lessons, with the knowledge that I get to forge my path. And I think the more we can just accept that, the easier it's going to be. Yeah. Relationships with moms are really hard as women. And I think the conversation about mother wounding is not to shame our moms for what they had. They had zero fucking tools in their toolkit. Like, we have to honor that too. Zero. Their moms did not talk to them about anything. It's not even just like, we didn't talk about menstrual cycles. Like, no, they didn't fucking talk about anything. So they had no tools, and they did so well with what they had. And so I think it really is just about honoring, what that is. And the more we as women talk about mother wounding, the more normalized it's going to become. And if our moms are triggered by us openly talking about this stuff, that's on them. That's their shit. They got to go clean up. That's not ours.
And I thank you for saying that, because I feel like there's still pieces of me that doesn't like to talk about my mom or the wounding that it caused, because she does get very defensive. And I think it's just nobody wants to take ownership, or at least if you haven't done the work, you don't want to take ownership in knowing that, like, okay, what I've done has caused trauma to my child. Like, of course, I even hate to think about the fact that, I've caused trauma to my daughter. Like, it's a hard fact of life, but it is what it is. And so instead of us holding, because for so long I held, even up until I would say a year or so ago, like really doing this deep work, was I forgive her. Like, she didn't have the tools. She didn't talk, like we didn't talk. She still is not the best at communicating. It's better now that she's moved away, but I feel like there's just so much healing that still needs to happen. And so I find it sometimes hard to talk about because I don't want to trigger her. I don't want to upset her. It's that like people pleasing part of, who we are, where it's like, I want to make sure, I want her to feel safe and her to feel okay. But it also is important. It's important to have these conversations, and it's important for us to go first. Like, we're here doing this work for a reason, to bring this to light, to talk about this so that it can be a normal thing. And so that my mom then hopefully can hear these stories and think like, okay, how can I do my work myself so that I can heal and I can start doing work to heal myself, and then also to heal on my relationship with my daughter. And so that goes for if you have a mom, if you don't, if you have children, if you don't, like, it doesn't even have to be a mother. It can be a grandmother. It can be an aunt. It's like whoever that mother figure was for you.
Totally. Yeah. And so we learn about this in TAC, but I'll talk about it here. Where we carry guilt, shame, and resentment, they're the deepest, owiest, most ingrained trauma expressions that we can have: shame, guilt, and resentment. And we all have them. So because they are such tender parts of us, we hide away guilt and shame and resentment by covering it up with anger, sadness, the triggery ones, right? Where it's like, oh, we don't trigger shame, we trigger anger, right? So mom gets mad, she gets defensive, then she cries, right? That's the normal reaction. And that's the normal reaction because it's the body's way of protecting itself from experiencing guilt, shame, and resentment. And what's really interesting about that piece is we go, why would mom be angry right now when I'm telling her how I feel? I tell her that I'm angry about something that happened and she pops off. Why can't she just take ownership? She can't take ownership because that guilt, shame, and resentment is not even hers. So she holds something that is not even hers, and her body's protection mechanism gives her anger, it gives her defensiveness, it gives her sadness, it gives her martyrdom is another one that might show up, right? So when we triggered that and we say, you did this and I just want to talk about it, and in your brain, you're like, this is healing the wound. Well, no, the wound that you just poked has a whole bunch of defense mechanisms up, and it's not even hers. And so when she comes to you and she's like defensive and also kind of doesn't understand why that's wrong or where that comes from, or right, you're like, yeah, this is exactly, they all do it. Why? Because that is guilt and shame that she was born with it, and it was from her mom and her mom and her mom. And so it's a very interesting dynamic when we start, we verbally express, here's how I feel because of your guilt and shame. It's hard. And so the work that we have to do is, it's like a 50-50 thing. 50-50, say how you feel. And when you get backlash, know that it's not her not listening or not receiving or not feeling. It's that she gets this wave of guilt, shame, resentment that like takes over her and floods the system. Nervous system completely dysregulates, doesn't know what to do, was not taught what to do with these emotions, feels completely unsafe in the situation. Only mechanism, defensiveness, right? So it's a 50-50. Say what you say and know that she's hearing, feeling, listening, but you will not get the response that you want. And the other side of it is just when she acts in certain ways, forgiveness and love with your heart without having to say anything goes a really long way. And this is not just mother wounds, guys. This is in
just
every
gonna say that. I'm like, I feel like this could go in male, like in father wounding.
Oh my God, your husband?
Yeah.
And there's another dynamic, right? So mom gets all of her guilt, shame, all of this stuff from her mom and doesn't even understand it. Men have a whole different layer on that because they were taught to suppress every emotion, right? Even the anger, the sadness. Ooh, they don't even get the sadness part. All they got is anger. That's it. Defense. That's it. But they carry guilt. They carry shame. They carry like, oh, their wounding is so deep too. And so we go to them and you're like, I feel this. their brains also go, I failed to protect you. I failed to love you. I failed. So they immediately feel like a failure. What is attached to failure? Shame, guilt, right? So that's what gets triggered. Interpersonal relationships is the most fascinating thing. And that's why I think TAC work is so cool. Not a shameless plug here, but like also take the program. You learn so much about emotions, emotional regulation, how emotions are stored in the body, the layers of which emotions are stored in the body, so that when somebody becomes upset or triggered, you can go, oh, I totally understand where that's coming from. I can have total neutrality and not cause a total blow up where we don't talk for 3 months.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. It's so neat.
Yeah, there's so much. I mean, I feel like we could just go on forever with that, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And you know what I also said to you? I'll say one more thing on that is that I've talked really openly with my mom on the topic of my mom. I've talked really openly about this stuff with her too, like teaching her how emotions are stored. And I say, like, with Nana, so my grandma, I would call her Nana, like with Nana, this is why she reacts in this kind of way because of this. And I'm, oh, like I understand. And I'm like, do you see the thread? So I think me explaining things through, like, oh, you see the light bulb moments kind of going off. So it's really neat how you can start to open the conversation. And I said to my mom one time, I have so much compassion for you and Nana and everybody else because I understand that this is your inner child feeling every ounce of shame, guilt, sadness, resentment, and it has nothing to do with you. And so you start to look at your parents and your grandparents and everybody, your partner, you start to look at them through a lens of like their little inner child. And all of a sudden you've got compassion where before you would have been like, you fucked up and I'm so mad at you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. There's like so many scenarios and like things in my life and things that have happened. I'm like, oh yeah, and this. Oh yeah, and this. Like I feel like we could
That's
just
the light bulb. You start looking at everyone on this podcast is like, I now view the world differently.
yeah.
Start looking at everybody and going, oh my gosh, I have so much compassion for you. And where every ounce of me just wants to rip you to shreds right now because we're human and we just get like, oh, you're wrong. I'm right. This is a situation. We start just, oh, compassion goes such a long
Yes. Yeah, I think
yeah.
that's one of the biggest things I have learned in this healing journey over the last few years too, is just that everybody has their own shit. Everybody has their own traumas. Everybody, and looking at these people that may have hurt us in the past, like, okay, I can have a little compassion for them. I can give them grace because they didn't know and because they had a traumatic past or because they weren't given the tools. And just if we could all just give each other a little bit more grace and compassion, like, wow, I just feel like relationships would be so much different. But we aren't taught this grace and compassion at a young age. And so that's why I think this work is so important. And especially when I see people, like I almost get a little bit jealous with new moms having babies and like, oh, if I could go back and have my baby now and like how I would teach them differently and how I would teach them emotions and compassion and grace and like all of this. But I also know that my kids came when they came for a reason, and they are the people who they are for a reason, and they are going to make a difference in the world in their own way. And so I have to let that go too. Like it is what it is, and we are given what we are given. And so it is just our purpose and our job here to move forward with what we have been given, and to use that and to share that with the world and not sit on it. I think that's one of the biggest things I've learned too, is just we've been given this medicine, we've been given this wisdom, we've been given this knowledge, and it is up to us to share it with the world, starting with our families and our homes, Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And on the topic of kids, it's not that we're not going to mess it up because all of a sudden we're like, holier than thou and I've healed. Like, oh my God. And people like, I've healed. I'm like, bitch, you got 7 more layers before lunchtime. So let's go. But like it's not that you get to a place where you don't do that. You know what it is that we take ownership. Where our parents didn't have the capacity to take ownership. When I fly off the handle, because I do, because I'm a mom of 3, and yeah, I get dysregulated, and yeah, she triggers me sometimes. I fly off the handle where our moms would have just left it at that and then went ruminated. I walk back into the room and go, hang on. I was wrong.
Yeah.
Or hang on, here's why I'm upset.
Yeah.
Hang on, here's why I want a do-over. I can't tell you how many times that I say to my preteen, my little ones, Mom needs a do-over. Can I try that again? And that's all it is. For you guys who are listening, how you're like, how do I navigate? Oh my God. You ask for a do-over. That's it. I reacted in this way because you know how sometimes it's like your blood is boiling and then your head pops off and you just have no control over your emotions. Mommy just experienced that, but how I acted was wrong and I'm sorry and I own it. And next time I will try better. Can you accept that apology from me? That trauma that happened in that moment doesn't get stored in the body in that moment. When we go back to our child, no matter how old they are, and we say, can I do a do-over? It closes that loop. And so they see the traumatic event. And then when we say, I was wrong, can I have a do-over? I'm human. Like, here's how I would, you know what I mean? And we do that, it just closes a loop. And so we're not creating trauma in the same kind of way. And I think even, you know, how you were just saying, like, I wish that I could redo it with my kids when they were really little. You're right, we can't. And we can start now, like you talking to your daughter and saying, you know, I've been learning a lot about XYZ. And I realized that as you were growing up, I reacted in this way and it was actually wrong. And I would like a do-over in this moment. I wish that I would have reacted in this way. And I wish that I could have modeled this for you. Can you accept this do-over?
Mm.
Closes a loop of trauma so that she's not 40 going, you like we are, right? Like when we're that's what we're doing now is we're like, hey, would have loved to close the loop 5 years ago, right? So that's all it is. If you have kids that are now you're kind of like, shit, I missed the mark. No, you didn't. It's taking full ownership now and saying, can I get a do-over? I've been learning so much about, you know, this reaction and the way that I reacted. And when you were a teenager, I used to get so mad that your room was messy and I'd freak out and I'd run around your room and throw things around and I would just want to take ownership that the only reason that I felt that way was because my mom used to do that to me and it makes me feel uncomfortable. And now when I see messes, it jacks up my nervous system and I feel unsafe and I feel chaos. So I would come into your bedroom feeling chaos and feeling not good enough and feeling really upset with my own self and I would take it out on you. And so I want to redo, I'm really sorry that I acted that way when I did and explain why it happened. Loop closed. Yeah.
So good.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
And the really cool thing about that too, Jess, is like if our moms would have just done that, like, hey, I want to do over, here's why I did what I did. It's really interesting. She's gonna look at that and go, that's self-awareness, that's self-reflection, that's self-ownership, that's admitting when you were wrong. That's, you know what I mean? It's like the lessons in that as a woman, oof, that's power communicating right there.
Yeah.
So
and
it's
also
teaching
doing it with your, like, I have a son too, 16, and I try to do that with him too, to just make sure, you know, like, hey, when you're like admitting when we're wrong, because I think there's, you know, this pattern in my husband's family where there's a lot of dysregulation, a lot of like people don't talk to each other anymore, and that, you know, like it's coming up in our family here as well. And so it's now it's like, okay, I need to teach him that this, you know, closing off communication is not the way. Like, we need to admit when we're wrong, coming to each other and being like, hey, I didn't handle that well. Or even when you were younger, like, I didn't handle that well, but like, I want you to know that communicating it and opening communication and sharing your emotions and all of that is so important now, so that when you have relationships of your own and when you have kids of your own, that you understand this as well. So it's not just our daughters that we're talking about here too, you know, it's our sons as well. It's yeah.
Sons are an interesting, like, I don't have any sons, but I know enough about obviously interpersonal relationships and all the things. Men and boys have a whole nother dynamic on it because they have the failure. So women don't, it's like, we don't believe that when we can't communicate something that it's a failure. When we let people down, we just let people down. We're shitty, man. Boys, they have it as like, they receive that they are failing in some area. So when we have that dynamic where it's like, you can admit that you're wrong, just admit that you're wrong, right? We teach them that, like, just own your shit, take ownership. I'll do it, you do it too. Where they have an extra layer on it is if they say, hey, I was wrong, they believe that they failed, and now they're failing you. If they fail themselves, they fail you. And as protectors, masculine energy, that's all they want to do is protect and support, right? They're like the foundation, they're the bones. And so when they come and they say, hey, I was wrong, they believe that's failure to protect. And like, you can imagine how that would dysregulate a system. So it's teaching them too that it's not only just out yourself and right your wrongs and then you won't be wrong. It's teaching them that you are not a failure for saying that you're wrong, and that when you admit that you're wrong, you win. You're not failing, you're winning. That's a win. And so it's rewiring the way that we perceive, like, you know, admitting that we're wrong.
Yeah.
That's why marriages just get like, oh my God, they're so messy. Cause like no one wants to be wrong. Because if you're wrong, then you're a failure, and you've spent your whole childhood trying to not fail everybody else. So it's like, I am not failing in any way by admitting that I was wrong. And I'm not outing myself for the sake of who's right, who's wrong. It's just like, that's why I love saying, can I have a redo? Or can I have a do-over? Because it's not me saying that I failed. It's just like, oh, fuck that one up. Can I do it again? Right? It's like on a test. It's like when you get it back and it's like, F, fail. Okay, well, throw that one out, try again. No, it's like, can I just get a redo? And then we kind of just erase this? Like, yeah, totally. We're human, we get a redo. So instead of saying, like, the way that I say it, or even teaching my kids, it's less like, just say that you were wrong and then it makes it right. It's like, ask for a redo. Here's why I think that I've kind of messed this one up. Can I have a redo? Hell yeah, you can. And if somebody asked me, Casey, could I have a redo? I'd be like, oh my God, you just got 12 points in the bank. Like, mad brownie points. Hell yeah, you can have a do-over. Ownership, right?
Yeah. So good. We went so a different direction than I thought we were gonna go, but I love it. It was so good.
It's really cool. I'm excited. It's the stuff that I always like. I love talking. This is like the deep couch conversation, you know, where you like really get into it, and then you're like, oh my God, it's midnight. We need to go to bed.
See, and that's what I want this podcast to be, is like these deep conversations. And that's why part of me is like, I want to have 3-hour podcasts. Like, I want to be how Joe Rogan has 3-hour podcasts. But like, you know, like, I need to build myself up first, like my name, because like he, you know, people know him. He's a comedian. He's a, you know, retired MMA fighter, and he advertises or
I love Joe Rogan.
You know, so it's like, who's going to listen to 3 hours of my podcast? So it's like, once I build it up, then I think I can get there. But I'm like, man, because it's hard. Like, I just want to keep talking with you. And I'm like, all right, well, we're definitely probably over our hour time limit here. But like, there's so much more we could talk about, you know? And so that's why
I feel like if you're known for it though, like there's so much juice. When people are listening, they're like, but I've got more questions. I feel like if you're known for that, like, you can do whatever you want. Permission slip in business.
Yes.
Who made the rule that you had to have 27
That's very true.
minutes?
And someone even said that the other day, like, why don't you just do it? And I was like, well, yeah, but I have to, like, now I have to go and tell people that are going to be on my podcast, like, hey, block out a 3-hour time block. Are people going to be like, that's crazy, I don't want to spend 3 hours with you? You know, so it's just restructuring all that. But yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for this. It was so good. So good. We'll probably have to have, like, when I get back to my 3-hour podcasts, then I'll have to have you back on, because we could just jam on so many things.
I feel like anyone listening today just got so much. Like, even just, I always say, learn between the lines. Like, that's a big piece of what I always say, learn between the lines. It's not what I say. It's a piece of yourself that you see in somebody else's story. And I really do believe that there's an ROI on every podcast episode and every program that you take, every mentor that you hire. Like, there'll be that one thing that they say that lands in your body, like, ooh, that. You know what I mean? Ooh, that. And I think that there was probably so many of those moments in this podcast today, mainly because we talked about a lot of shit that is not yet being talked about. Like, this is taboo. We need not only the little E beside this one, because like I got a potty mouth and sorry, not sorry. It's just the way it is. Like sentence enhancers, and I like them. But I think we need like a little T, like a little taboo beside it too. Like trigger warning. We're gonna talk about a lot of things, and like I'm so here for these conversations.
Same. And that's why I want to do this. Like, I just want to bring to light these conversations that people are afraid to talk about. Like, that's, So thank you for sharing in that with me today.
I like today.
Me too. Thank you for being here. And I will put all of your info below, but is there anything that you want to share, anything you want to say, anything you want to like close a loop on or talk about in your own, because we didn't even really get to like business a ton.
But isn't that the beauty of it? I feel like, and what's really cool about the way that I teach business is like, I can teach you how to build a funnel. I can teach you how to build a program. Like, it's not that hard. It's the juice. It's the soul. It's the, like, when you can activate this power and speak your truth, like I don't want women to watch this or listen to this and go, that conversation, I'm going to go speak my truth. I'm going to go have a hard conversation. I'm going to go do that. That's building a legacy business. There's a very big difference between building a little business online and building a movement, building a legacy. And that's who I work with, is the people that want to build that legacy, that movement, that the importance, the bigness of who they are here to be. And so, although we didn't talk about business today, didn't we? Because all of this is like, you listen between the lines. I just gave you the $1 million framework. Go and talk about this stuff in your own flavor, your own values, your own truth. Go use your free social platforms on your phones and go share this stuff. That's the legacy movement, So we don't always have to be talking about business schmizness. There's so much more to it than that. And I think these are the important conversations that will affect your business, help you grow your business. All of it. Yeah. So is there something that I want to say? I always have more things to say. Come hang out with me on Instagram, on Facebook, all of the places. We'll keep having these conversations, and get your ticket to As She Rises Live. It'll change your life. I think that's the only thing that I'm like, if you could do one thing for yourself in 2025 or 2026 or 2027, these are timeless. Whenever you're listening to this, find the next date. If you could do one thing for yourself that I know without a shadow of a doubt will change the trajectory of your life, because I have seen it happen hundreds of times, it's getting in that room. Get on a plane, get on a train, hitchhike, time travel, whatever you got to do to get in that space. It will change your life, and it has nothing to do with me. It's about the sisterhood, the community, the healing, the learning from other people who have built 8-figure businesses. Like, it's the space you got to be in, no matter whether you have a business or you don't, what stage of business you're at. If you are resonating with anything that we talked about today, you need to be at that event.
Yeah, I'm gonna be there. I got a ticket.
Oh my, I'm gonna be there. I'm just kidding. I'm gonna be there.
I mean, I've talked about it a lot on the podcast. I kept saying, like, I just got back from the spiritual business conference. And so if anybody's wondering on how many podcasts I've said that now, like, this is the spiritual business conference that I was talking about. So
And it's so funny because a couple of years ago, it was just an idea in a journal. So you guys don't discredit your ideas are happening in your journal. Like this, I was like dancing with cacao under the moon. And then I'm like, getting a little bit weird. And into the journal was like, Shakti Revolution. Here's what it is. Here's the speakers. And I was like, who in the hell? I am not doing this. Like, I don't know what I'm doing here. No one knows who I am. Like, how dare I even think this? Then COVID shut the world down. So then it took us a couple of extra years to get it going. But it was just an idea in a journal. And I can't imagine life without it now for the women that it has impacted truly. It's just the coolest event. And like, me, I like to party. I know how to throw a good time, guys. Be ready for all the surprises. And yeah, I'm really, really excited. Vancouver, September
Exciting. Well, thank you again for being here so much. And thank you guys for listening to this episode.
Yeah. Yes. Well, my pleasure.
Oh, thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you loved listening as much as I loved recording. Each and every conversation that I have here on this podcast just lights my soul on fire. I love having conversations where we explore and challenge our ways of thinking. So if you've resonated with anything here and you're looking for more, please connect with me on Facebook in my Soul Deep community group, which is free. I'm also offering all my listeners a free month in my Soul Deep Connection membership. I have poured my heart and soul into this membership, bringing you resources to help you grow into the best and truest version of yourself. I've used my knowledge and experience as a nurse, combined with my knowledge and experience as a coach, breathwork facilitator, and somatic embodiment guide. This library consists of breathwork, kriyas, and other resources and modalities that will help you learn about and give you the healing tools to live the life you've been dreaming about, and to help you find your true passion and zest for life again. This library of resources is vital for everyday maintenance. And on top of the library of resources, there are live monthly calls, ranging from breathwork, Kundalini, full moon or new moon circles, as well as guest speakers on a variety of different topics, from decluttering to marketing to sisterhood and all things healing and wellness. So make sure you join today to get you back on track to living that thriving life that you are longing for. Remember, the first month is free, and my hope is that you find so much value that staying is an absolute no-brainer. It really is everything that I was looking for as I started my journey, and so much more. I truly hope to see you inside my community. And if you haven't yet, please follow me here and on social. Like and subscribe, and make sure to share your favorite episode with your friends and community. And when you do, make sure to tag me in that post. If you tag me, you'll be entered into a drawing for that month where you can win a free one-to-one session, breathwork or coaching session with me. All the links will be in the show notes here below. Until next time, Soul Deep fam, and in the words of my dear friend Mary Lacey Banks, I'm holding you so tight in a thought hug.